actions get the respect to which they're entitled. So we owe Ben some praise when we see him again. George Mosey. Hello, George. Bilal Qayyum. There's Bilal. Michael Ramming. Michael Wehrman. There's Michael. And Sarah Young. Hello, Sarah. Sarah, do you have someone you want to show us? Or does the baby only make an appearance once? All right, you're muted and I'm not going to put you on the spot, but should you want to, let him drift into the conversation, everyone likes a new baby. Probably not parents as much, but I think they're quite cute and fun. Anthony, would you please introduce yourself and the staff?
Hi, I'm Anthony Arachi. I'm the Acting Executive Director of the Police Advisory Commission. Tonight here with us, we have Mr. Danny Guy, who is the MC of the evening, and Policy Analyst Angelica Hendricks. I don't see the rest of staff, but we are missing Stacy and Janine and Talia, who are with us in spirit, if not in person.
Thank you. So Danny, you are going to introduce our guests.
So actually we have Neil McDevitt, who I'm unmuting now. Neil, I'm asking permission if you want to unmute yourself.
Well, actually, you would need to unmute the interpreter, which I see is done. So good.
I think he's in the meeting.
No, Neil is here, and she is interpreting for Neil.
Oh, she's interpreting for Neil. Oh, okay, great.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you.
Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Neil McDevitt. I am the Executive Director for the Deaf Hearing Communication Center in Swarthmore, Pennsylvania. We're providing the sign language interpreting services for the entire greater Philadelphia area. And we are the largest nonprofit organization focusing on communication access for deaf and hard of hearing, as well as deafblind individuals in the Philadelphia area.
Thank you for joining us tonight, and I'm glad that we have gotten back to a long ago promise to have an interpreter join our meetings. And thank you for the insight on the question about tone in sign language, so thank you. Next up,
just quickly, Megan Maris, who's our current interpreter, and Donna Ellis are the two people who you will see tonight interpreting, just so everyone knows who they are.
Thank you, Danny. So do I have a motion to approve last month's minutes? I'm trying to get my motion practice down, George, so.
Looks like Sean motioned.
Okay, Sean, are you're motioning? Yes. And Mujib is seconding. Okay, all in favor? Okay, moving on to the agenda. In terms of my report, we are still waiting to or hoping to work with City Council on the next configuration of the Police Advisory Commission. We know that there are certain folks at City Council members who are taking lead on developing what that new entity looks like, and we are optimistic that they will incorporate the collective wisdom of the current PAC and its staff into developing the new organization. I don't know that we have much to say about it yet. Anthony, do you have anything to add to it?
Just that we have been going back and forth with numerous council members and staff, trying to provide our knowledge and insight into this process, and it's been going very well so far. Everybody's been very supportive.
Great. Bilal, not to put you on the spot, is there anything you want to say about that? I know that you've been also closely involved.
No, I haven't heard any new information.
Okay, thank you. So I think we're all on we need to know, and we will keep you updated as there are new developments. So thank you.
Also, Rhonda, just to let
Please.
you and everyone a heads up, it looks like NBC 10 is actually here as well in our meeting.
Welcome. All right, so Anthony, I'm going to pass to you for the Police Advisory Commission updates.
Okay, so welcome everybody. This is our final meeting of the year. I think on numerous levels, it has been a wild year for everyone. And it's been the most productive year in the PAC's history, probably. There were a lot of ups and some downs, but I think overall, it was a pretty incredible year. We took 122 complaints this year and got them all to internal affairs got 97% of them, I should say, to internal affairs within 5 days. We submitted numerous reports, executive reviews, and explainers. Some of the high points of that are the Community Police Mediation Program, which we're getting off the ground at the beginning of next year, which allows the community and police to resolve individual disputes with each other instead of going through an investigative process and hopefully to everyone's satisfaction. We had a pointed firearms review, the Plainview project report, which was a great piece of work, UFRB letter, which came out recently. And I mentioned that one because the UFRB, the Use of Force Review Board process, had been on hold for quite some time, almost a full year. And the PAC took the initiative and pointed this out to the commissioner, who immediately jumped on it and took steps to reschedule it. It should be coming on again in the next few weeks. And we're all very excited about it. We also had the GBI report, which came out, and really numerous other ones, and for the first time ever, too numerous to mention. So please, if anyone's watching, please check us out on our website, and you can check out all of our great work that we put out this year, and all of the effect that it had in the police department responses, which are also included. The other exciting thing is the ballot initiative that was passed to reimagine police oversight in Philadelphia, where a new organization is actively being created. And as we speak, as I just said, we've been in contact with numerous members of council and other interested parties to try to impart our knowledge and expertise into this process. And as some of that was released publicly in the architecture for the new CPOC that we released a few weeks ago, and that's not a proposal, but it's just an idea of budgeting and staffing, so stakeholders can have an idea how to practically apply these principles to the new independent police oversight organization.
Anthony, we're using a lot of abbreviations, so tell everyone what CPOC
sorry.
is and also GVI.
Yeah, sorry, that's the gun violence initiative. So it's yeah, so essentially we were just trying to offer some best practices for that to try to help combat gun violence in Philadelphia, to try to help that program be as successful as possible. What other acronyms did I use that I didn't? Oh, CPOC, yes. The Civilian Police Oversight Commission. That's going to be the sort of what PAC transitions to over the next year. We're going to get a new name and a whole lot of new other things, hopefully. But we'll see. I'm very excited about this. I think that it's going to be great for Philadelphia and all the citizens, and I think it's going to be great for the police department too.
Since Rhonda was talking about it, Samantha Williams is actually here and said she'd be happy to talk a little bit more about that question. About
sure. I think
Wonderful.
In reality, that concludes my update. So we can defer to Sam, and then we'll come back for a second and I'll introduce Matt.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm going to try to unmute you, Samantha. Sam.
Hi, everyone. This is Samantha Williams. I'm the Director of Legislation and Policy for Councilman Curtis Jones Jr. here representing Philadelphia City Council on tonight's call. And I just wanted to give a brief update on the Citizens Police Oversight Commission initiative. First, I really want to thank Anthony. He has been so helpful since he has taken over as executive director. He always checks in with me. He has had several calls with me, helping to provide much needed feedback on what we should be using as our model here in Philadelphia. So thank you, Anthony. And I know I think we're supposed to have a call scheduled for this week. So I hope we are still on for that.
Yes, we definitely are.
In terms of the ballot initiative, obviously it was passed back in November. That ballot initiative gave City Council the opportunity to draft subsequent legislation to actually create the Citizens Police Oversight Commission. So that is what myself and a group of other attorneys at City Council are working on right now. Ideally, we would want to see a commission that is really reflective of what the neighborhoods look like in Philadelphia, that is large enough to represent all of those neighborhoods, that they have a decent budget, which Anthony has really been helpful in providing a framework of what a fully robust Citizens Police Oversight Commission needs to look like in terms of departments and actually how much funding that would take. I think that we are going to be ready to move forward with the introduction of subsequent legislation when City Council comes back and the end of January. As many of you may know, we are on recess at the moment, so we're not introducing new legislation, even though some of you might see that we're still having hearings. We're not going to be in executive session until the end of January. But I am hopeful that the legislation that we are working on, that we will continue to work on over Christmas break and into early January, will be ready for introduction at that time. I do think that the biggest issue is going to be funding. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, Philadelphia is facing a great economic shortfall, and that will be present across every department when we're going into the next budget cycle. But we are ready and willing and hopefully able to provide the new commission with much more funding than the current commission has, because we know that that is key to making sure that the commission is able to adequately perform their duty. So we have been having a working group meeting. So we meet often about what the PAC should look like, how the PAC's powers should be designed in the constraints that we have with current state law, and looking at best practices. So we're thankful that for everyone who has helped out in that arena. And we're looking forward to January and to the hearings and to getting the ball rolling. As you know, once the draft legislation is introduced, we will have hearings in the Public Safety Committee. We're hopeful that, you know, this gets passed. I think that all council members do want to see a strong, independent Citizens Police Oversight Commission that the voters approved. So that is the update I have for right now. And if there's a will for me to answer questions, or if I can be helpful to anyone who has a question at this moment, we can do that too.
I actually have two questions, if I may.
Sure.
So not to put you on the spot.
I am on the spot, so that's okay.
So, and you're handling it well. Can you explain to us what you mean by the constraints of state law?
Through our talking with the working group, we would obviously love to have a commission that potentially issue a ruling and there be no arbitration, right? And there be no opportunity for that ruling to be overturned after a hearing. And that's obviously not the case. You know, and because of that, I do think that, you know, other jurisdictions that don't necessarily have those constraints have the opportunity to have a much stronger Citizens Police Oversight Commission, where the commission actually has the ability to have the power to discipline police officers and make those types of decisions, and that be it. We are hoping to still be able to set up a framework that even if certain things end up in arbitration and they become overturned, that it is at least a more transparent process, and that the public is aware of what decisions are being recommended, what the commissioner is doing with respect to those decisions, what happens in arbitration. So that's a big part of this process, is trying to make it more transparent to the public what's actually happening, even if there are constraints.
Thank you. I know that the PAC has an explainer on arbitration. Danny, if I could prevail upon you to put that in the chat, that for folks who want to take a look at that. And then I have one more question, which is a whole lot easier.
Okay, cool.
The question is that I've been getting contact from folks who are interested in becoming part of the new configuration of the PAC, or who have ideas on how they would like to see the PAC reimagined. And I know that there were hearings sponsored by Power before the election on reimagining the PAC, but I guess I'm hoping that that wasn't a time-limited offer, and that we can still send folks your way who have information they want to share.
You absolutely can. We've been trying to meet with everyone who reaches out to our office with ideas. In terms of people who want to serve on the PAC, we haven't necessarily worked out that mechanism of how appointments are going to be made. We have, like I said, we have a draft of legislation, but I can't really field any applications because I'm not necessarily the person who is going to be, making decisions with that regard. But anyone who wants to speak to me about their ideas or what we're thinking should feel more than free to reach out to me by email. My email is samantha.williams@phila.gov. And the councilman has also been very willing to meet with individuals himself that want to talk to him about their ideas. We did have a listening session outside of the sessions that Power was doing. We had our own listening session. We got a decent turnout, but we could always use more input. So I would say feel free to reach out to me. Also, just know that, like I said, this has to go through the hearing process. So please stay tuned to that as well. When this is finally scheduled for a public safety hearing, we want people to come to that hearing and talk about, hey, council, this draft is looking right, or this draft's not looking right, and these are the changes that need to be made.
Thank you very much. Do other folks have questions?
If anyone has questions, feel free to send them in the chat, or you can use the raise your hand feature from Zoom. Sean looks like he has a question. Sean, I'm gonna unmute you.
No, I don't have a question, but the Danny, Anthony, can I get them a update on Thursday?
What's that, Sean?
I,
You want to talk to me on Thursday?
No, can I get them a update on the disability hearing that me and you talk at?
An update on the disability hearing. Do you want to do that tonight, Sean, or do you want to have a slot on January's meeting? What would you prefer?
Well, that's what I want to ask you or Anthony.
I'll tell you what, because we have guests that are scheduled to present tonight, why don't we give you the prime slot on January's meeting? Is that okay?
Yep, that sounds good. So,
Good.
Give me a call, Sean, and we can work the presentation out.
sounds good, boss.
All right, man.
Sean.
Any other questions? Danny, you're monitoring this, I assume?
Yeah, I don't have any new questions. It doesn't look like.
All right. Thank you very much, Sam.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna stay on the call until 7, and then I have to leave to another meeting, but I'll be here listening.
Okay, and I'll give you a call tomorrow to set up a chat time.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Anthony.
All righty.
Thank you.
All right, up next, we have our primary presentation for the evening relating to Directive 7.20 for deaf and hard of hearing individuals, providing effective communication. The representative from the police department is Matt White, and he's going to be presenting on this topic for us. And we thank him very much for doing so. And Matt, if you're there, take it away.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Anthony, for the introduction. First and foremost, I hope that everyone is healthy and safe right now. I know there's a lot of people going through difficult times related to the pandemic, and hopefully everyone in this meeting tonight is doing okay. First, obviously, thank you to the PAC for allowing me the opportunity to come in and talk about this topic.
Matt, give me 1 second. I just want to switch the interpreters quickly. My Zoom is being not helpful. Let me just make sure that I have interpreter up. Looks like her video. Hold on one moment.
All right, while we're waiting, I'm going to say hello to my friend Sylvia Metzler.
Sorry about that. There we go.
Good to go?
Yep, let me just start the presentation.
Wonderful. And finally, before I get started, I'd just like to say it's always great to see my old law school classmate, Sam Williams. In the future, I'd like to go before Sam rather than after, so that I don't have to follow her up, because
He's a tough act to follow.
she was a real trial lawyer, and she's much more interesting to listen to than I am.
Great. I'm going to start your presentation.
Great, thanks.
Give me one.
The way I approach this tonight in a couple of segments, right? I wanted to start with a story of personal experience to begin.
Can everyone just quickly? Can everyone see the presentation?
I cannot.
Okay, give me 1 second. Sorry about that, folks.
Think you're getting there, though.
Yep, there it is.
Right. So just what I was saying here, right? That I want to start with a personal story and then move on to what I'm saying is what we learned, which unfortunately is the the bad part of the situation, right? Some of the shortcomings the police department had, and then talk about what we've done to correct them, and finally get into why we were here. So the personal story: 7 years ago, in the fall of 2013, I was working as a patrol officer in the city. And I was at this intersection that you're seeing here at the corner of 27th and Wilder Streets. Wasn't a sunny day like this. It was about 1:30 in the morning, and I was patrolling with my sergeant at the time, and we came across two men on the corner, right around those little trees in the square boxes, and one of the men had his arm wrapped around the other man's neck from behind, and he had a hand in the guy's pocket, and so, knowing that something was afoot, we stopped this individual, and during a frisk for weapons, we found that he had a knife on his person. But our problem initially was that we couldn't communicate with the individual he was holding on to. The man was clearly distraught and frightened, and he was making noise, but we couldn't speak to him. So when we got the first individual, looked like the offender in this case, secured, my sergeant at the time, who was a pretty bright guy, took out a pen and paper and handed it to his notepad and a pen and handed it to the other man, who immediately wrote down robber. And we proceeded to go back and forth through an exchange of written notes where he was able to explain that he didn't know this person, that he was trying to take his money and his phone. And so we were able to make an arrest and stop a crime that night. And having looked at it again recently, it led to a successful prosecution, and we were able to provide some service there, which is I think a good thing. But it took me to 3 years later. I was surprised when I was one of the first people, I guess, to read a letter from the Justice Department that sort of laid out in very clear terms a lot of situations in which the police department was not successful in cases where they were dealing with someone who was deaf or hard of hearing. And so this is I guess I'm calling the what we learned section, right? So we failed to provide service to crime victims, right? As a police officer, I think that hits me right in the gut, because that's service, right? It's a big part of what our organization's about. And what we learned from the report from the Justice Department was that some folks who lived together, they were roommates, and they were deaf. And when their apartment was burglarized, they tried to call the police in to report the crime. And the responding officer, rather than exchanging notes or trying to get an interpreter or doing any of the things that I now know you should do, he instead insisted that they knew how to read lips. Right? This was, I think, we were told, so disturbing to these people that they actually wound up moving away from Philadelphia because of the lack of police service. So, that really was tough to read when I first saw it. And the other thing is, on the flip side of that, right, we failed to provide effective communication to people who are arrested. And that's a big issue too, because it's I think a fundamental issue of fairness in the criminal justice system is that people understand the proceedings that are taking place against them, right? And we were bringing people into custody, and we weren't telling anyone else in the process that they were deaf. And so in Philadelphia, as I'm sure many of you know, preliminary arraignments are conducted via closed circuit television. So these people were being put in front of magistrates and they should have been being advised of the charges against them, and they weren't, because they couldn't hear what the person was saying. And so they were being sent out from our holding facilities without an adequate understanding of what was taking place. So I think it was so bad in one instance, it actually led to the person being arrested again on a bench warrant because they didn't go to a hearing, and that they, I understand, didn't know about. Right, so that's obviously a big problem too that we needed to address. So we had to do some things, right? We run as the police department runs on directives, right? We have number off the top of my head, maybe I should have looked it up, but a large number of directives that officers can reference to guide decision making in certain situations. And we didn't have anything that really addressed this topic. So then, in 2013 in the field, in one incident, we were able to resolve a situation effectively, but obviously in other situations we weren't. So we needed to address those issues. I think we're one slide off, but I think I can keep going. So we needed to acquire equipment, right? So people need, the deaf hard of hearing need either, a telecommunication device for the deaf or a video phone. And so we're able to, source some of these things and get them, into the department. And I think really what we did, which is important, is we we made some friends. We found some local advocates who were able to help us, because at the end of the day, we don't know everything about dealing with this topic with people who are deaf and hard of hearing, and how to best accommodate their needs. So I know at least a few of them I've seen on the call here, but Neil McDevitt and Robin Ahern are both here, and they've been tremendous supporters of the department, and really given a lot of their own time and effort to come in and help us. So we appreciate that. Like I said, we were able to get a video phone and a caption phone and TTY into our police facilities, so that people who were taken into custody would be afforded the same right as anyone else to be able to make a phone call. That was important. We were also able to acquire some communication cards that we've distributed to all of our police officers in the field, so that when they come into a more casual interaction with someone, not something that maybe rises to the level of bringing a certified interpreter out, but something to just help affect preliminary communication. There's cards that they make that can keep in the visor of their patrol car or in their clipboard to work with folks. And we wrote a policy, right? And that's Directive 7.20. That's been in effect for it's 2 years now, I think. And we think that's provided an effective way for our officers to address situations, right? So for example, we were able to piggyback off of certain things within the police department that we were used to. So like dealing with special populations, right? Now, if someone's arrested and we establish that they're deaf or hard of hearing, rather than sending them to one of the 6 divisional booking centers, we're going to take them into the police detention unit at 8th and Race, where there are some more, there's the equipment there, obviously, but there's also a nurse on hand and some more services available. It's a larger facility. And we've begun training. So we, in addition to putting out every time we put out a new directive, we conduct roll call trainings where, sergeants will go over the, new policies with officers before their shift. So, those took place. We also wrote a training bulletin where we tried to condense, a lot of the key points of Directive 7.20 into a, one pager that people could reference. And we also made a training video, right? So that was actually probably the bigger parts of this project that was very interesting. And again, our friends came to our aid and helped us. And Robin participated very actively in the creation of that video. Can't thank her enough for the help there. So after the training video, right, we're on to the final portion of our training, right, which is now next year during what's called MPO, Municipal Police Officers Training, which every officer goes through every year. There'll now be a section on this policy specifically, and on dealing with individuals who are deaf and hard of hearing. It'll be a 4-hour block of instruction that every police officer will receive in 2021. So I think it's a very brief overview of sort of what we've done and what our situation is. But the real purpose of my being here tonight and why we're here, right, is to listen, right? I really want to hear from you folks, and any questions or concerns, or there's anything you want to say about perhaps experience interacting with the police department, or how we've provided access to you. I'd love to hear feedback. So please. Oh, I'm sorry. You just showed one more slide, which reminded me of something I forgot, which is very important. And I'm glad you just got through it. Right there, premise history, right? So we have a function built into what's called our CAD system, right? Computer aided dispatch. So when an officer responds to a 911 call, they will also simultaneously get a message dropped down onto their computer in their car that will sort of tell them some of the perhaps same things that the radio dispatcher is saying. What you can do is you can fill out one of these forms and submit it to radio if you're comfortable, and if there's a special need at your home. What it'll do is it'll put a fixed message on any police response to the property. So I know, for example, having spoken with someone who was deaf, who, when the police had to come to their house, the first time they knew that they were there was when the officer was waking them up out of their bed, right? Because they responded to the house and they'd gotten inside, and this person didn't know, so it was startling to them, right? So with something like this, you put some information about your household to the extent that you're comfortable, and sort of give officers a heads up as to any special situations that may exist there, right? And they can adjust the response accordingly to address those needs. So.
Danny, can you show us the other pages of this application form?
I'm sorry. I only sent the one, so it's the one before that should have been a picture of the phillypolice.com, right? Ah, here we go. Yeah. So this is the our website, phillypolice.com, and one of the 8 tabs or so there is forms and reports, and right at the bottom is a link you can click on to you can download a copy of that form, or I think it may actually, you may be able to fill it out online, but you can definitely download it.
So I have a question, and I think that some of the other folks may have questions. Do the other pages ask for the type of disability?
Yes, they do, right? So they're here, I'm sure I can find it here really quickly. So they do, and I can't rattle them off the top of my head, but I can say that they do ask a number of questions. So they get pretty specific in the information that they try to obtain. Here we go.
All right, so Matt, if you can you explain a little bit about the form, where the information goes, maybe who stores it, and how it's protected?
So what I say is that the police department keeps any records that we receive confidential, right? So with where this form goes, it goes into our police radio unit, where it just through a data entry process we put into the CAD system, so that fixed message will come up. So and just.
So when it comes up, does it only apply to calls from the address, or if you get a call about the address, will the information also, say my neighbor calls on me, and this form applies to us? Will the officers who respond know when they're responding about this form and this issue?
So yes, they will, right? So the premise history application in the CAD system attaches to the property, not to who's calling. So regardless of whether you call for service to your house, or right, your neighbor calls because they see something that they think requires a police response, as long as the address itself is where the dispatch location is, then this premise history will come up. So the form itself, it does account, just going back to the original question, it does account for a number of disabilities: blind, low vision, deaf, hard of hearing. One just marking that there's communication disability. One uses the term mental retardation, mental illness, autism, physical disability, seizure, and then there's just a blank, other, where you can fill in something if you had a situation that you wanted to notify the police about.
Do folks have questions about that form?
Yeah, there's a bunch of questions we've already gotten. One person just asked the ADA form new, which I believe the answer is no.
No, I don't have a release date on it, but we have had it up there for I'd say at least a year, but I'm not sure how long it's exactly when we put it.
And I know that there are some updates in the works for language and other things.
Yeah.
The next question I have from Stephanie Kitchener. I'm going to unmute you, Stephanie.
Matt, you stated regarding deaf or hard of hearing individuals, you stated that standard protocol is not to immediately call for an interpreter. And so I'm wondering at what point is it decided to call for an interpreter? Who makes that decision? And is there a concern that something may have been lost or misinterpreted, or that the situation could have escalated in that time of not calling for an interpreter? Thanks.
Did we lose Matt?
No, you have to unmute him,
Oh,
please.
he's not unmuted. Oops.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I muted myself. I generally mute myself when other people are talking, and then when I tried to unmute myself, it said I couldn't because you had muted me. So, the world of Zoom. So, to answer your question, it's a very important question, and I may have misstated that a bit there, but ultimately, the individual who is deaf or hard of hearing who would need the interpreter makes the decision, right? Our policy is very clear that no matter how brief or routine the interaction may seem, if the person says, I want a certified interpreter, the officer will summon the certified interpreter and wait and have that person come out and interpret. But we don't default to certified interpreters in, let's say, a car stop, for instance, right? Let's say you pull a car over and you're able to get the encounter completed without needing an interpreter to the satisfaction of the officer and the citizen, then we're not going to say make them wait any longer. The person delay their travels or something to summon an interpreter. But it is very clear in the written policy, excuse me, that if the person desires an interpreter will be provided.
Great. Did that answer your question? I think she might have muted herself.
She's given a thumbs up. though.
Yes, I think,
Awesome.
yes.
Ashley, I believe was the next person I had a question from. Ashley, I'm going to unmute you. Ashley Cladwell. Oh, she doesn't have access to audio. So let me ask her. She had two questions. Her first question was, do you have a system in place where mental health professionals can respond to calls of a person in a mental distress if that person is nonviolent? And then I'd follow up, or are police still required to respond to crisis calls regardless of level of intensity?
So I think this is perhaps a separate but somewhat related issue that the department is actively engaged in review and making potential changes, regarding the topic of mental illness or mental health issues and police response to those situations. So I don't know if that's the best answer, but I think there's a whole lot of moving parts on that topic, maybe beyond the scope of this policy, that it would be improper for me to get too deep into that topic.
Great. The next, sorry, someone else asked. Robin said that you should talk about the communication card, Matt. Oh,
yes. So like I said, I think I mentioned it briefly as I was going through, but we provided every officer in the police department with a sort of like a laminated, thicker paper communication card, and so it has a number of written things on there and symbols also for common things with related to police encounters, pictures of speed limit signs and things of that nature, right? And that's really for the if you're having a small interaction like a car stop or a sort of immediate need to establish communication. Certainly not something that would take the place of an interpreter, but something that it's I think has proved helpful for brief preliminary interactions in the past to to have officers and people who are deaf, hard of hearing use this card to help establish sort of the initial basis or reason for the interaction.
Neil actually had 2 questions. So Donna, I'm going to unmute you, I believe. There we go. You should be unmuted now.
Hold on one second. Is it possible to make Neil a little bigger? He's about this big on my screen.
Yes.
Control it if you could make him larger. Spotlight him.
Hold on once. I don't know that you would have to do it, Dawn, I think on your gallery view. Let me actually, you know what? I could spotlight Neil. Hold on.
Spotlight me and spotlight Neil.
Great. Give me 1 second.
Thank you.
Oops, nope, that was wrong.
I think I lost Neil.
There we go. Sorry. Great.
No, I need you to spotlight Neil.
He is spotlighted, I believe.
You know,
I see him nice and big.
wow, some people see him.
My view. Hold on, let me switch my view to speaker.
Yeah, if you switch to speaker.
There
you
he is.
Thank you for your patience. I appreciate it. Go right ahead, Neil. Well, welcome to the world of doing Deaf Zoom. A Deaf Zoom session, it always looks something like this. Yes, I do have 2 questions for Matt. Thank you. First of all, hi, and great to see you again.
As always.
First question is about the ADA form. Are there abilities for people to select multiple disabilities on that form? I really want to go back to what was asked prior, that typically it's not just one disability in a situation. A person could have multiple disabilities and they all impact each other in different ways. For example, a deaf person might also have mental illness, and that can create a higher challenge than just a single disability. So I wanted to ask that question about the ADA form. My second question, that is related to connecting information between, for example, the Philadelphia Fire Department, let's say. They might have their EMS responses. Will that information be connected back to the Philadelphia Police Department and vice versa? Those are my questions.
Thanks, Neil. So regarding the multiple disabilities, the answer is yes. So they're just check boxes on the form, and there's certainly no limit to the number that anyone could check, right? There's also sort of multiple slots for descriptions of people and the disability that they're trying to identify. So if you had multiple people living in one house, they could each, customize a CAD input here, and then there are several other questions and things that perhaps relate to some of these disabilities that are asked on the form, and people are free to fill out as much or as little information as they're comfortable doing. But yes, you can certainly identify more than one disability. In terms of the connected, sort of the integration of systems, I guess is what I'm thinking of it as. They operate on separate dispatch systems, right? The police department and the fire department. So while all of the original 911 calls come into a single call taking center, things that are deemed to be or fire rescue matters are sent over to their own dispatch team, which is separate from police dispatch. So I guess the true answer is I'm not sure whether these CAD systems overlap from one to the other, and that's something I'm going to have to look up and get back to you. My gut says no, but I certainly don't know, and I would rather look it up and get you the right answer than give you a potentially wrong one. So I'm just making a note to follow up on that.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Next question I had, Matt, is how easy is it to make changes to the ADA form, like i.e. change of an address? Is this information shared with any other government departments?
No, so these are, like I said, these are voluntary responses, and they stay within our police radio units. We only keep it in there, we only keep it in the CAD system for 2 years. So you actually have to renew it every 2 years, but we don't keep indefinite information on people or properties built into a system, because for that very reason that people do move, right? And you wouldn't want officers to have the incorrect information when responding to an address. So but your question does raise a very good point that you do need to actually, update this every 2 years. But we would certainly take things out if you just wanted them out before then. Remove them at your request.
And Matt, to that point, if somebody wants to remove themselves or their household from that list, can they do it, and how easy is it?
Well, right. You certainly can. The answer is definitely not no to that, right? We would, if someone said, I put information of, my own information into your system and I'd like you to take it out, we would certainly honor that request. I'm just, I guess, pondering what the mechanism is to do that. Going back to our
We're going to go
form.
switch interpreters now.
But if you, again, if you notify, the police radio training unit and their number is provided on the form there, they, will take anything out of the system at your request.
Do we have more questions, Danny?
Neil, actually, I don't have any. I have some other questions pertaining to CPOC. It looks like, but Neil wanted. Oh, actually, Sean has a question. Let me unmute Sean, and then Neil had some other, I believe, questions or insight that he wanted to share. Sean, I'm unmuting you.
As a disability advocate, I have a question, like one, when are y'all going to make it mandatory that all officers get basic sign language training?
Well,
Because because you might have some people that might be deaf, and if that all officer is not trained on how to deal with the individual, then you just like I said at the meeting on Thursday, like, so sometimes these officers may have preconceived notions, and they got to be trained if we want to become a better society, and that is part of, I do believe, police reform on training all officers on basic sign language.
I think it's a very interesting point, Sean. And to be clear, we're far from perfect, and we're always looking to improve over at the police department. I think what you're talking about sounds maybe somewhat similar to things I've heard of in the past, like survival Spanish classes for officers, and certain things that there's at least a model for in the past, right? So I can't promise you that we'd be able to get every officer into some sort of mandatory basic sign language class, but I can tell you that I'll look into it, right? And I'm certainly happy to see if that is something that is a feasible training that we could acquire for the police departments. There's obviously a number of constraints that we have to deal with, but I think you bring up an interesting point, and I'm certainly happy to look into it for you.
Robin did mention sort of in response, but we have to be careful with officers not being certified as interpreters. Cases can be thrown out of court if officers interpreted a sign instead of a certified interpreter.
No, that's very true. In fact, that was one of the case studies that we originally reviewed. Right, was that there's a situation where someone was taken into custody, and we had someone, an employee of the police department, try to interpret, do sign language interpretation, and it turned out to be a failure, right? And the person was like, "Are you a certified interpreter?" And the person was like, "No, but I know sign language." And they were like, "This isn't going to work. I can't understand what you're saying." Right? So yeah, no, Robin, that is a good point that we wouldn't want to sort of, I guess, blur the line between interpreting and people that may just have some basic understanding of some signs. Right?
The next question I had was from Sarah. Sarah, I'm muting you.
Thanks, Danny. I actually want to also ask Sean's question in a different way, because what I have learned recently, the last month that we talked about when we elevated the premise history form, is that the form can sometimes create more problems than it solves, because it does not resolve and actually may exacerbate issues of bias. And just because officers know what to expect when they show up doesn't mean that it will be a safe experience for the folks with disabilities at the address. And so my question is, how is the police department working to create policies and actively training police officers to know what service they need to provide to individuals who associate with having a disability?
So I think maybe a preliminary answer involves the idea that I think more information is better than less, right? So if we've created this system so that we can try to arm our officers with the most knowledge, right, that they can potentially have going into a system or into a situation, I'm sorry. And I think that's always going to be a benefit, right? To have more information at your fingertips than less. In terms of training on providing how we need to provide services to people who identify with disability. I'm not sure that this is the right answer, but I think is that we're trying to provide them the same service that we would anyone else experiencing either crime victimization or something else that the police are responding to, right? Like the whole premise of what I've learned and what I've been working on with this policy development over the past couple of years, right, is that this is about providing the same access that anyone else would receive, right? If someone has a disability that limits their ability to communicate through traditional means, right, we want to find ways to adapt and provide them access, and we're required to under the ADA, right? And we want to do that, right? We want to make sure that we're getting that person the same access to service that anyone else would have, right? So I'm not sure if that entirely answers your question, and if you have
I guess to be more specific, today we're talking about a new directive that teaches officers around a policy that's specific to individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. And my understanding is that there are unique needs for different segments of the disability community. And so, how are these other needs being addressed in the same way that officers are now being trained to be able to provide those individuals with interpreters if requested, or to understand, what exactly is meant when you say we need to provide these folks with the same level of services that we provide to other folks who are not deaf or hard of hearing. How are we doing that for the rest of the disability community, I guess is my question.
Right. So I think while this policy does speak specifically to deaf and hard of hearing, I think as sort of a broader approach, right? It does lay out the idea that access is required for anyone. And so, I mean, I think maybe I'm hearing the suggestion here, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that there's like more work to be done on sort of a different policy that covers other disability related issues. I'm not entirely sure what those are offhand, and if you have a suggestion, I'm certainly happy to listen to it. Right, I do know that we some of our existing trainings in de-escalation and CIT and some of these other things do try to teach officers certain skills and ways of dealing with people in sort of severe emotional distress or experiencing a situation like that. And so that I think maybe sort of plays into this theme as well. But am I right, or am I following you with the idea that like there may be some other situations that you think need to be accounted for in our basic directive program?
I mean, I don't know if there's a right answer. I myself am just learning about, how to be thinking about police service and relationships with the disability community. So I just wanted to find out more about how the police department has existing policies and practices, or may not have those, or is thinking about creating those for different members of the disability community. And others should jump in who have more experience in this area.
Well, I wonder if there are, in the way that you have highlighted this directive for the deaf and hard of hearing community, if there are other directives that speak to the issues Sarah's raising, if you can present to them or get those to us at some point in the not too distant future.
Sure. I mean, I think maybe a different way of saying it, right, is that we're responsible for providing access to anyone, right? Regardless of the barrier, we have to try to provide a reasonable accommodation to overcome it. In the context of how this policy wound up being developed, beginning with the communication from the Justice Department, every instance that it was cited essentially involved individuals who are deaf, right? And there's sort of very straightforward ways to address some of these issues, I think, right? Like with certified interpreters and with having access to a video phone. And so not to say, I guess you say like it fit neatly almost, like this was something that there were systems in place and things that there were remedies readily available, right? So but of course, like to the extent that there's something else that you think is or something else that folks think is a disability that requires sort of an accommodation or a modification that we could build into policy in the same way that we've done this, I'd be more than happy to hear about that and look for ways to work that in.
If I may just follow up one more round on this, I guess what I'd be interested in is the information that's on the premises form. People will then self-identify about their disabilities or the disabilities of people living in their household. And it's so what happens with that information? So you have it, but then what do you do with it? So we know with the killing of Walter Wallace, that there was information provided that he was struggling with mental health challenges. And so then we wonder, so if that information was known, what would you do differently?
So I think the only answer I can provide that respectfully is that there is or maybe pending litigation on the Wallace case, and so I can't speculate on any
certainly
any potentially change in response to that
certainly
situation.
But I mean, I guess more broadly, and we respect the pending litigation, but more broadly, is there a protocol that once information is known about a person in a household that you then do something different? The collecting of voluntarily submitted information is one piece, but what do you do generally once you have information on the folks who live there?
So I think that you can, speaking very generally, right, is that you can try to modify your response, right? So, for example, if you responded to a household that had identified someone in the house as being deaf or hard of hearing, maybe when you walk up to the door, you're already carrying your communication card with you, because you wouldn't normally carry that up to every door you go knock on when you get out of your car, but maybe in this case you would. Maybe if you had some information in the that this was going to be a serious assignment, you would contact police radio and say, hey, why don't you try to get our certified interpreters on the line, because we're probably going to need them out here, right? So you could take actions based on information that's put in front of you, right? I think that's really the goal of the forum. Right?
Thank you. I realize we're kind of going a bit afield of what we asked you to talk about, but I think it is
I'm happy to talk
an
about
area of concern, to make sure that if we're collecting information, let's make sure that we do something beneficial with the information that we're collecting.
No, absolutely. That's a great point.
A real quick question, Matt. Someone asked, do you know how many people are in the CAD system using this form currently?
No, I do not. I'm just taking notes of the thing. One of the big things when I do any of these, whether it's testifying at city council or this is my first PAC meeting to speak at, I'm very happy to be here. But it's important for me to take notes of things when I say that I'll get information or look into something. So CAD ADA premise history numbers current, right? Because I don't know, but I'm sure that's something we obviously couldn't disclose like individual cases, but I don't think providing like an overall number citywide would be an issue.
Great. Looks like Donna's switching over. And actually let's use this moment because Neil, I think, wanted to say some more stuff, and I'm gonna spotlight Neil. Just let me remove Megan. Just point up Neil's. All right. Donna, can you see Neil? Oh, let me unmute you.
I think I'm spotlit as opposed to Neil.
You're both spotlit.
Let me see. Now I can see. Ready. I wanted to add some brief context to the conversation, and this might be able to answer some of the questions as they've already been discussed. One of the challenges for people who are deaf and hard of hearing, one specific challenge is accommodations for deaf and hard of hearing people. They tend to be operating costs. Let me give you an example. If you're looking at a person who uses a wheelchair, part of those capital costs when you're working on refurbishing a building will cover the cost for the wheelchair. And that's different than how it is impacted for a person who's deaf or hard of hearing. Those operating costs, those policy decisions, and the focus on those choices, the efforts that go into those choices are different. And that is one of the challenges I know that the Department of Justice in particular has mentioned, that there was no process in place to address that type of need. I also want to provide some context as well. We tend to think of things on a spectrum, if you will. So if we think about how many departments are doing this type of work, we might automatically go ahead and take a look at Washington, D.C. We might look at their Metropolitan Police Department. They have a unit specifically dedicated to people who are deaf and hard of hearing, and they have that unit in place because they have such a large population of deaf and hard of hearing people who live in that particular area, who live in that town. So that unit was established initially, it was created by their chief, Ramsey. And that chief came here to Philadelphia, Chief Ramsey. So I think people took a look at that system and saw some similar projects that might be able to be produced here in Philadelphia. I don't see that as happening quite just yet, however. But if you want to talk about these things and as they exist on a spectrum, that police department, because of their particular needs specific to their particular town and population, and it's probably one of the top departments in the country that is specifically focused on deaf and hard of hearing people. Now, with this new policy taking shape in Philadelphia, Philadelphia really is moving closer and closer to that type of model, although our police department doesn't have any clue or any idea of what it is that they need to do at this time. Unfortunately, it's required by the Department of Justice to put something in place, to have a procedure that's actionable. Let me just back up what I wanted to say. I had another point that I wanted to make. Give me just a moment. I do believe that the key here is policy. The key here to address these efforts is to go back again to those visits, because technology for the deaf community is ever changing quickly, all the time. So there are always new features available. Just over the past 2 or 3 months that have come out because of COVID, new features have become available. So this policy, I believe, needs to have built into it a review process, a procedure to review, to be able to engage and use new technologies, to have that included somehow in the procedure. Thank you very much for hearing me.
All right, are there more questions?
There was a suggestion from Robin, which I shared with Matt, but I'll just share it to everyone. Not to reveal identifying information about people who self-identify on the ADA premise history form, but collect numbers on what disabilities are being represented to understand what disability populations are most represented in Philadelphia.
Robin says, thank you for that.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any more questions related to this topic before we open the floor to other more general questions?
I don't think so. I do have a question about PAC stuff from Katrina Jones. I'm gonna unmute you.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to stay on to the end, but thank you again for allowing me to come here and talk about this a little bit. And thanks for everyone for the questions and the feedback. And I've starred my notes here that I'm going to try to get some follow-up information either to you know, folks who asked
Thanks,
directly
Robin.
or maybe
Really
through the
appreciate
pack.
it.
All right. Thank you.
So much,
Thank
Matt.
you, Matt, and thank you, Robin. This has been really helpful.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So actually my question related to PAC was if there were any ideas that actually that have been identified currently, like right now, that you feel has any merit or that you feel is that might be, helpful in the progression of the oversight committee's vision?
Well, we released a program architecture for units and things to think about regarding the creation of the new Oversight Commission. That full report is available on our website, and if Danny has a minute, maybe he can post it in the chat for everyone to check out. But there are a number of things that I think the administration and city council are considering. Was there an idea that you had that you wanted to make sure that sort of us in the world knew about?
Well, I think one of the strongest things that stood out to me personally is that there is the PAC, PAC team, which was there, and that's great. And I was just wondering if there was any more so community insight or community engagement opportunities that outside of these meetings that could provide the suggestions, but a little bit more aligned to being a part of advisory or review, and having more community engagement that way. So that way everyone continues to stay on the same page, and that there isn't an opportunity for to be overlooked and everyone's voice can be heard that way.
Well, I mean, I think you're going to see, the commission as it exists now exists to really do exactly what you were talking about. And I think And I think and any future oversight commission is going to see that sort of in an expanded way, right? I mean, the city council has committed to having representation from multiple, from all neighborhoods. And I think that community outreach and insight are going to be the primary motivating factor behind any new civilian oversight organization.
I kind of agree and I kind of disagree with that. And the reason why I a little bit disagree is that there was a previous time that a few months ago that I reached out to even my district to kind of get a little bit more involved. I was visiting, was joining different meetings with our House representative, and there were people that was more that I don't know if they were aligned to PAC specifically, but they were aligned to the city of Philadelphia. And when they directed me to my police district to partner with them and get a little bit more involved, I kind of got it kind of hit a wall pretty much. So in that case, I can understand the point that this is what the PAC committee's whole point of doing, but I feel like it didn't actually meet the necessary goal exactly of what. Yeah.
You referred to what they call a PDAC at the district?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
Were you referred to what they call a PDAC? The PDAC in every police district is sort of like a group of community members that relate specifically to that police district where they meet. Is that what you refer to? That's separate and distinct from us, but yeah, I mean, each district has sort of a mini committee, right? That to address specific neighborhood issues with that police district specifically. I've seen ones that are very, very active and effective, and I've seen ones that are not. I'm sorry that yours was not, but they're not associated with us. But what I can tell you is that if you want to start being more involved today, you can contact us and we can try to figure out some way to get you in there. So and address some of the issues that you have.
I'm so glad you said that because I did just send an email a couple of times already. So I'm looking forward to your feedback then.
Yeah, just make sure you get your contact information to Danny. You can do it in directly to him now, or you can just sort of Google Danny or me, and we'll make sure that we get you as involved as possible.
Yeah, if you want to send your email address in the chat, we can follow up with it.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Privately in the chat.
Yes, privately, yes.
There's only I can send to everyone. No one else can.
Oh, good to know. Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for that feedback and question. I think I want to say Bilal had a question, so his was about general stuff. So I'm gonna mute you now, Bilal.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Sure.
Anthony, this was a couple questions for you. I know it just came up in the discussion, but what is the status on the Walter Wallace case? I know it's the family's suing, but what is do we have a present status on the review of what happened, and has it been any action taken by the police department from the officers involved in the shooting? Are they still on the street? Do we have as a PAC any update on the Wallace case?
Well, that review is still ongoing. So I mean, and our ability to impact that, it will occur when it's listed for UFRB, and that won't be until it's completed. So now what we know so far is that we know the basic facts of the case, and we know that the investigation is in process. But there's nothing in terms of new that either us or the public doesn't know already.
Okay. Can we ask from the police commissioner what the status is? I mean, I think since it was such a vulnerable situation, and I understand that there's the litigation going on, but a lot of folks are asking what is the status of the investigation. So I would recommend that the PAC consider maybe sending Outlaw a letter just asking that question, or a timetable when the public would be notified about the officers? For instance, I don't know, are they still on the streets? Are they, not on the streets? And a lot of folks are beginning to ask that question now.
Well, they're not going to be they're not going to be on the streets while the investigation's ongoing. It has to conclude entirely. So what I can and will do, we can write up a letter asking exactly that of police administration, and I'll send a draft at some point this week for all the commissioners to review, and we can do that this week.
Okay, the second question I had was, there was a recent shooting with a police officer. I can't remember when it happened, but
Beltonville?
it was
There's
this
been a couple recently, actually.
Yeah, that's what are the status of those shootings?
Well, which one are you talking about? I mean,
Well, you said a couple. What are the?
Well, there was one up in the Northeast, and then there's been a few. So what?
Well, let me suggest something. When you give me reports from now on, we should have from you a status report on all police shootings.
Ones that haven't been resolved or ones that are recent?
Recent.
Now, when in those status reports, what do you want in them? Because a lot of times I'm not going to be able to relate specific facts of the investigation, especially not in public.
Okay.
And until they're released public, because our role at the UFRB is based on that kind of confidentiality. So,
Bilal, if I may, perhaps we should have this conversation offline, and then that way we'll be able to have something coherent to present to our audience at the next meeting. Is that okay?
Okay. Fine.
Thank you. Any other questions, Bilal?
Great, thank you. I don't think I have any other questions from anybody. Did anyone else have any other questions about the PAC or? Oh, looks like Matt raised his hand. Hold on, I'm gonna unmute you, Matt.
Thanks, Danny. So just while we were going on here, I did find the answer to one of the questions, and so I figured I should provide it quickly, right? So the ADA premise history does integrate with both the police and fire rescue sides of the emergency services in Philadelphia. So I believe that was Neil's question during the presentation, and my gut answer was wrong, and the right answer is that that yes, you will get that premise history to both sides, both the police and the fire rescue sides.
Thank you so much, Matt.
That's all for me.
Thank you for a quick answer and your willingness to admit you were wrong.
You know, if I just wish I got like $1 for each time I did. I'd be rich.
Great.
Do we have more questions, Danny?
No, I don't have any more that I see.
Okay. Our next meeting is Monday, January 18th. Before I call for a motion to adjourn, I want to wish everyone a healthy and happy new year. It's been a tumultuous year, and I hope that the new year will bring us all some peace. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yep. It's like Bilal and Sean.
Yeah, all in favor? Okay. I believe the motion carries.
Great.
Have a great night, everyone.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Danny.
I'm putting in our chat the sign up for our mailing list if you're not on it and would like to join. And I just want to thank again, Donna and Megan for interpreting the meeting for us.
Thank you. I hope they will be back. And Danny, once again, you've done a fine job of working through all this technology. So thank you.
As always.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you all have a lovely holiday season. We'll see you in the new year.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.